What's up, guys? It's Wally, and if you guys have been like me lately, you've been working really hard in these Tera Dens to finally get that chance of catching that Shiny Rayquaza that eluded you all throughout Sword and Shield. And whether it took you 1 battle, 10 battles, or 1,000 battles, you're probably sitting there now with your Shiny Rayquaza thinking, hey, how am I going to make this thing viable for Regulation I? So we're going to go through a couple different Rayquaza builds that I actually think could be pretty good as we get into this new regulation. Now, full disclosure, in terms of all of the restricted Pokemon that are available, I do think that Rayquaza would probably be something in like the C tier or maybe a very low B tier. Don't get me wrong, it's something that could definitely work, but you are working way too hard to get those wins. But whether Rayquaza is your favorite legendary, you think it's the best shiny in the game, which it is, or you just like going with things that are off meta, there are definitely a couple different builds that Rayquaza could use that are going to be really good in this regulation. But before we get into some of these builds, if you guys are new here just haven't yet, please make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. If you guys do enjoy the video, please make sure to drop a like too. But before we get into the builds, let's actually kind of go over Rayquaza in general. Now, Rayquaza is a dragon and flying type Pokemon, which is actually not a horrible typing unless you are facing an ice type Pokemon. Now, Rayquaza does have 4 weaknesses. It does have that 4x weakness to ice, but then a regular 2x weakness to rock, dragon, and fairy. Now, of course, with terrestrialization, there is a way to really get rid of all of those weaknesses, but we'll get into that as we get into a couple of these builds. Now, it does have the ability Airlock, which basically just takes any weather condition that is out there and basically negates it. And this is actually a really good ability, especially as it pertains to this new regulation, because with all the Pokemon that are going to set the sun, set the rain, or even a couple Pokemon that might come in to set the snow, like Alolan Ninetales, or something like Tyranitar to set the Sandstream, it's going to be nice because Rayquaza is going to be able to negate all that. And aside from just like the residual damage that comes from the weather sometimes with like the sandstorm, there are a lot of other benefits too, because of course you're going to think about all of the moves that are going to get powered up, like the fire and the water in the sun and the rain, but you also have to think about moves like Hurricane and Thunder that hit 100% in the rain, or something like Blizzard that hits 100% in snow. All of that is going to go away. You're not going to get that, and plus, especially with like the Sandstorm, that special defense benefit that all the rock type Pokemon get, or in the snow, the ice type get with the defense boost, that's going to be negated as well, so you're not going to have to worry about any of that. And also you can say goodbye to Aurora Veil because that ain't going up either. Now, its stat spread is actually pretty good as well. I mean, maybe not incredible on the defense, special defense, because 90 is obviously not triple digits, but still somewhat bulky. Its HP at 105 definitely saves it a little bit, but you're definitely looking at the attack and special attack when you're looking at Rayquaza, because a 150 base is really great for either of them. And that makes Rayquaza really viable as one or the other. You can go either way, just depending on what moves you want to go with and what kind of team you want to go with as well. That 95 speed isn't great, but it's also not horrible as well, and you'll see why later, why that might not even be an issue for you if you're going the physical route. Now, it does actually have a pretty diverse move pool here. Obviously, you see some flying, rock, you even have ice yourself, normal, fighting, ground, dark. Like, you have a little bit of everything here, and a lot of great moves that you can end up using. Obviously, you have a pretty good mix of physical and special attacks, and of course you have things like Protect, Rest, even Roar if you wanted to go with that, or Stealth Rocks if you wanted to put up some kind of hazard, but there are a lot of different things that you can go with. It could even be a Tailwind Mon as well, which, of course, again, we will end up seeing a little bit later. But again, a very diverse move pool, and again, whether you go with the physical or the special route, a lot of great moves that you can end up choosing from. So first, we're going to end up looking at one that I think is probably going to be the most common build, and that is going to be the physical Clear Amulet with the Swords Dance. Now, the great thing about Rayquaza is it does have access to extreme speed, and if you guys have seen things like Arcanine or something that was very popular in Regulation C, and even I guess D and E and all that too sometimes, was the extreme speed Dragonite with the Choice Band. Rayquaza can kind of work like that as well. We'll look at a Choice Band build too, but again, I think this is one that's probably going to be the most common. Obviously, you do want to kind of max out your attack there. A 222 max is really incredible, and when you go with something like Swords Dance, that's going to double that up to 440. That means if you're able to get one Swords Dance off, that extreme speed, especially if you terrestrialize into something like normal, it's going to get that extra stab, and it's going to be extremely strong. Of course, you need something like Dragon Ascent, which is a flying move and will be a flying stab, which is going to be good just in case, there's a Pokemon that is, Ghost type, and you're not going to be able to hit that with the extreme speed. You can always go with the Dragon Ascent to be able to actually hit them for some damage as well. Of course, those are the only two attacking moves, but realistically, after a Swords Dance, and if you do pair this with something like Chi and Pao, which is going to drop the defense of all the Pokemon on the battlefield, it's still going to do enough damage to a lot of Pokemon out there that it's going to, if not take them out, then do a lot of damage to be able to let one of your other Pokemon be able to kind of pick up the pieces, so to speak. Now, the great thing about Clear Amulet as well is if there are a lot of Pokemon that have Intimidate, obviously like Incineroar is going to be popular once Regulation I comes back as well, you're not going to take any attack drop from that. And not just that, but if they end up going with something that like Parting Shot, that's not going to affect you. Icy Wind, obviously, yeah, you have to worry about the 4x weakness to the ice move, but still, you're not going to take that speed drop. So those are things that you're not going to have to worry about with that Clear Amulet. So all the boosts that you end up getting from the Swords Dance, or if you get something like a coaching boost from one of your Pokemon where it ups your attack and your defense, that is not going to be taken away unless you end up switching out and coming back in. Now, of course, with this type of set too, you can always go with something like Life Orb to be able to get that extra 30%. But realistically, with the Swords Dance and like the extreme speed and all that, I think you're going to be fine. But if you do want to end up going with something like the Life Orb, you really want to make sure that your HP stat ends in 9. And the main reason for that is because anytime you use Life Orb, again, that takes away 10% of your HP. And if your HP ends in 9, you're not going to be getting that extra one as if you went up to 210. An HP stat of 209 is still going to end up taking away 20 every single time you use it. And same thing if you were 200 HP. That would take away 20 every time you use it. But if you bumped up to 210, that would take away 21. I know it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but realistically, that would end up making it optimized. Obviously, some people do want their defense and special defense to end in an odd number, because if you end up getting stat drops and stuff, it just kind of optimizes it a little bit too. So you can end up, if you want, taking those down to 4, and then just adding it to speed if you want, or something like that. But either way, you want to make sure that the HP stat ends in 9 if you want to end up going with the Life Orb. But again, realistically speaking, I think that the Clear Amulet one is probably going to be the best one that you can end up going with. Again, being able to keep all the boosts that you end up getting is going to be extremely beneficial. And especially if you're using Swords Dance, yeah, you want to make sure that you keep all of your attack boosts just to make Rayquaza as strong as possible. And of course, with that normal Tera to be able to give extreme speed the stab, +2 from like the Swords Dance, you're going to be doing enough damage to things where you should be taking them out in 1 or 2 hits. Now, I did say that we're going to look at one that was more like a Choice Band build, so obviously with the Choice Band, you want to make sure that you don't have something like Swords Dance, Protect, or any kind of like status type move, just because you're not going to be able to use it. You're going to lock into one thing, and if you end up putting something like Swords Dance on it with the Choice Band, you lock into Swords Dance, that's great. You're going to end up having a +6 at one point, and you're going to have the 0.5 multiplier onto it with the Choice Band, but you're not going to be able to use anything else. So obviously you want to have 4 attacking moves on Rayquaza if you're going to have the Choice Band, just to really take advantage of that. And one of them, realistically, you want to have is like a pivoting move, which is why we have U-Turn on it. I know U-Turn is a bug move, it's only 70 power, but still, being able to swap out and bring another Pokemon in, just so you can kind of change moves with Rayquaza, or be able to kind of pivot with them, makes it really, really beneficial. So that's one move that you really want to have on there, trust me. Now, of course, we do have the extreme speed on it too, because with the Choice Band, again, it's going to have that 1.5x multiplier on it. That way you're going to be doing a lot more damage. And again, if you pair that with something like Chi and Pao, which lowers the defense of everyone on the field, you're going to be doing more damage. And of course, that's, again, kind of like a callback to the Dragonite from Regulation C going forward. It's a really, really great strategy, and one that could kind of be a pain in the ass. But if you have something that kind of prevents priority or something, that's going to be the way to stop it, which is why we have other moves than extreme speed on it, like Dragon Ascent. Again, it's a flying type move. It's a really great one for Rayquaza. 120 power. Of course, it does end up lowering Rayquaza's defense and special defense by 1 stage in the same way that something like Close Combat would. But still, for the damage output that you're going to get from that, it's definitely worth it, in my opinion. But again, 120 power, 100% accuracy, you know you're not going to miss with that. Of course, again, you got U-Turn as well, which is going to be great for the pivoting. And then I would definitely suggest something like Iron Head. Iron Head ain't bad because Again, Extreme Speed is going to be a great move, and same with Dragon Ascent. But say you face something like a Rock type. I know it's not something that's going to be extremely common, but still, if you end up facing something like that, Extreme Speed is going to be resisted, Dragon Ascent is going to be resisted, U-Turn isn't going to do much, so you want to make sure that you have something that's going to be pretty strong against it, and I think that Iron Head would be something that would be great too. Obviously, again, there are a lot of other great physical moves that you can put on it. It's just a matter of what you want on your team. You can obviously have 5 other Pokemon around you that are going to be able to make up for some of your weaknesses, be able to have some coverage with other moves. So, again, it's based off of what you really need on your team. I just think that Iron Head was good because, again, Rock is one of those types that is going to be really strong against Rayquaza, just because it is the flying type. And since Extreme Speed and Dragon Ascent, which are going to be your 2 stab moves, because with the normal Tera, of course, Extreme Speed is going to be a stab, but since it is going to be resisted, you want to have something on there that's going to be super effective. And again, Iron Head is a really, really great move for that. But again, you have a lot of different moves that you can end up going with. You can even go for an extra stab move with a Dragon move. Maybe not the best because, again, some types are going to resist that, and some are going to be immune to that. Hello, Fairy types. So maybe that's not something you want to go with, but again, you have a lot of different options here, and a lot of them could be very viable, again, based on what you specifically need for your team. So again, you do have a lot of great moves to end up choosing for Rayquaza if you end up going with the Choice Band. I definitely suggest having Extreme Speed and a stab move like Dragon Ascent, and even something that can pivot again, like U-Turn. But then that 4th move really is kind of up to you. So again, a lot of flexibility with Choice Band Rayquaza, minus the fact that you can only choose 1 move when you're out there. But other than that, a lot of flexibility with it. And also, just for the stat spread, obviously, you want that attack to be up as high as possible. With this one, we did end up going with something that was Jelly as opposed to Adamant, and the main reason for that is because that allows its speed to get up to 155. The main reason why 155 is important for Rayquaza, at least in my mind, is because Iron Bundle is going to be out there again. Iron Bundle is a max 206 speed, and when you take into account the booster energy, that ends up going to 309, which means that if you have Rayquaza and you have a Tailwind Mon on your team, you can end up going with Tailwind. Rayquaza is going to outspeed by 1 point, and that way you can either take it out with like potentially an Iron Head or an Extreme Speed, even potentially the Dragon Ascent, or if you really feel the need to pivot, you don't feel like you're in a really good situation, go for the U-Turn, bring in something that is going to then hopefully potentially hinder Iron Bundle or something that's just going to resist a potential ice move. So again, being able to have that kind of speed right there at 155 is going to be really important for that matchup. But still, a 202 for attack is really great. When you take into account the Choice Band, it's great. It raises it by 50%, which means that's going to essentially be up to 303. And again, this is one where you really want to make sure that you have an even number for the attack, because with the Choice Band, again, you're raising it by a half, essentially. So with the even number, you're going to actually get a whole number to get it. That way it's not like if you're a 201, it's 100 and a half. Pokemon will end up shaving off that half, and it'll just be a plus 100. They're not going to round up for you. So be able to have that even number just so you can have that whole number being added to it. Now, if you didn't want to go with something that was physical, you can always go with the special attack, like I said, because again, the 150 base special attack is equal to the attack, so realistically, you can have either. Now, we do have 2 different builds for this. First one that we built was a Throat Spray one. The main reason for that is because anytime you use any kind of sound move, that ends up raising your special attack by 1 stage, which is honestly extremely great. So being able to have something like Hyper Voice is really good because that's going to use the Throat Spray, plus it's a spread move and it's going to do some pretty good damage as well, as long as you're not facing a Ghost type. And again, this is one where Terra Normal would actually be great too. You get the stab on the Hyper Voice, plus you get the +1. So that means that like Air Slash, which is going to be a stab move for Rayquaza as well, and same with Draco Meteor, they're going to be powered up and you're going to do a lot of really, really good damage. Now, of course, you do want to make sure that you have that same type of speed up to 155. That way, you are still going to end up being faster than Iron Bundle. So in the instance that you want to make sure that you take out Bundle with Rayquaza first, you can always end up going with the Tailwind, and you'd have something to be able to end up hitting it. And honestly, Hyper Voice wouldn't really be necessarily that bad for it. I think it would be a really great move and could do a lot of great damage to Iron Bundle right off the bat. Now, of course, if they end up pairing that with something Like Flutter Mane, you're not going to want to go with that because it's not going to affect Flutter Mane, and then it's still going to have something like a Fairy move that's going to be super effective into you. But still, if you end up getting the right lead from your opponents, it could be a really great move to end up using. Now, of course, that special attack is maxed out to what it is. It's going to be the same as the attack because the same base number at 202. So you're going to be doing a lot of great damage with that. And again, if you Terastallize into normal, Hyper Voice becomes stab. Draco Meteor and Air Slash are both already stab. So you're going to get that bonus along with it too. And again, since you are a really strong special attacker, you're going to do a lot of good damage. Now, we did end up putting the rest of it into HP just to be able to get that HP up as high as possible. But realistically, you could always end up just putting that in speed if you wanted to make sure it was a little faster than a couple other Pokemon that you'd want to calc for. So again, that's going to kind of be up to you, but realistically, I think it's great to be able to have kind of max special attack without having the modest nature and just being able to outspeed bundle with that speed. Now, if you didn't want to go with like a normal Tera and you didn't want to go Throat Spray, you can go with one of my favorite things that I ended up using on Eternatus and Lunala, and that is Power Herb Meteor Beam. Another thing that could be used on Rayquaza, and again, because you have that same special attack, that's going to be a really great move to use, be able to get that +1 and get that up to 303. Now, since it's going to have the same stat spread, I wasn't feeling extremely creative from that perspective, so I apologize for that. But with this, the Meteor Beam, of course, it is only a 90% move, unfortunately, so you do have the chance to miss, unlike the Hyper Voice, but still going to be a good move that will end up giving you the +1 to your special attack. Now, of course, you have something like Dragon Pulse, which is going to be a stab move. If you don't want to go with the Draco Meteor, you can always end up putting that on the Hyper Voice one as well if you don't want to take the -2 if you use Draco. Just showing that there are a couple other special Dragon moves that you can end up putting on it to use instead of just the Draco Meteor. But again, another great stab move that you can end up using. And if, again, you didn't want to go with the normal Tera, you can always end up going with Fire. Fire would be a good Tera because it's going to end up resisting, obviously, the Ice as well as the Fairy. Of course, you're going to still have that one weakness to Rock, unfortunately, but if you don't see anything that is a Rock type or would carry something like Rock Slide, you're pretty much in the clear from that perspective. So, again, that's not a bad Tera to end up using as well. Of course, another great one, I think, is Steel, only because Steel is going to end up taking away all of your resistances. Ice, Rock, Dragon, Fairy, all of those are going to be resisted by Steel. Obviously, you have a lot of things that you're going to have to worry about, like Fire, Ground, and things like that down the line if you don't end up KOing things in just one move. But realistically, if you're looking at just like one specific turn and you're trying to resist an Ice move and a Fairy move from like a Bundle and a Flutter Mane, that could be a really great Tera to make sure that you stay in there. If you're using something like the physical one, you can always set up Swords Dance with that. If you're using a special one, you can always use the Meteor Beam or the Hyper Voice just to be able to get that +1, and you end up tanking a lot of moves as well. And again, this is one problem with Rayquaza as well, as it is a bit of a Tera hog because of the Ice weakness that it has and the existence of Bundle, Chi and Pow, and a couple other things that have like Icy Wind. Again, not necessarily the greatest mon to end up using if you are looking to Terastallize some of your other Pokemon. It is going to be a Tera hog, but it's why we love Rayquaza. But again, those are two other really great Terastallization types that you can end up using for Rayquaza if you don't want to use normal. But in this instance, if you do have the Fire, Flamethrower is something that you can put on there that would be really great. You have the 90 power, obviously it is only a single target, but you have the chance to burn. It's going to be extremely strong because of the stab and because of the +1 that you're going to get from the Power Herb. So again, could be something that you could use that could be really good, plus you get that stab bonus as well. Again, just like with the physical moves, you have a lot of different options here. Of course, if you really wanted to go for like the gambler's mindset, you can always go for Ancient Power because even though it's 60 power, you have that 10% chance of raising all your stats. And hey, if you end up having like the Meteor Beam and the Power Herb first, that could always be nice. Get up to like +2 and all that. But obviously you don't want to have like Meteor Beam and Ancient Power on the same set just because what's the point? Especially if you're not like a rock type Pokemon or have like a Rock Tera, it's not like you're going to get a benefit from that in terms of stab. So no real use putting that on there. I mean, you can always go with something like Blizzard. You can always go with like Hydro Pump. You can go Hurricane. Although I will say, unless you are using something like Galarian Wheezing or something like that, definitely do not put those on your Rayquaza thinking that the weather is going to help you out. The airlock that you have on Rayquaza is going to negate all those benefits. So again, and kind of the same thing with the flamethrower in the sun as well. You're not going to get a benefit from the sun. So don't think that you're going to get, that extra damage in the sun with the flamethrower. Same type of thing with Blizzard. You're not going to hit for 100% if the snow is up. Hydro Pump, Hurricane, all those things are not going to benefit from the rain. So again, don't think about that. Just put it on there if you think that that's just a move on Rayquaza that you want to end up using and one that's going to help cover for the rest of your team. But again, a lot of great moves that you can end up putting here, and ones that, again, I think that could be extremely viable. Now, if for some reason you didn't want to use a Rayquaza that was strong in the attack or special attack department, and you really wanted to use it as more of like a supporter, you can do that as well. Now, I will point out, if you do end up doing this, I definitely would not do that in this format, in this regulation. Single restricted, you want to make sure that your restricted Pokemon is going to be one of your stronger Pokemon and one of your attackers. Unless you're going with some kind of meme team, definitely make sure that Rayquaza is not a supporter on a Regulation I/Regulation G team. Once we get into double restricted, then you can make a case for doing something like that. But for now, definitely do not do it. But if you are interested in it, you can always go with something that is like a Covert Cloak. And again, I think that a Steel Terra type would be great for this as well. Now, the great thing about Covert Cloak, again, is the fact that, say, a Pokemon on the other side ends up having Icy Wind or something like that. You're not going to take a speed drop from that. That's the great thing about Covert Cloak. And if they end up faking you out, you're not going to end up flinching, which means that if you want Rayquaza to be out there to be able to set up something like Tailwind, you definitely can. Of course, it does have access to Icy Wind as well, so that's another form of speed control. Breaking Swipe is great because it is a stab move, plus you're going to end up getting the benefit of lowering both of the Pokemon across the way by one stage in their attack. And if you're facing some strong physical attackers, that is going to be a really, really huge benefit. Now, of course, I think Rayquaza, once we get into the stat spread, could actually benefit from more speed on this because, again, you want to make sure that you're going to be quicker on the field to be able to get the benefit from that Breaking Swipe or from that Icy Wind. Now, the fourth move on Rayquaza can definitely be changed around based on what you need on your team. I put Roar on here because I thought it would be funny. In fact, one of our friends, Tapo Wapo, if you guys haven't checked him out over on Twitch, definitely make sure to go do so. Fantastic Pokemon player, great guy, and a really incredible Trick Room player. But on one of his Pokemon, I don't remember how long ago, he had Roar on it. And as a really great way to send a Pokemon out that either got a lot of stat boosts or they are trying to set or reset a Trick Room, you can always end up using that in them. They end up going out, a different Pokemon comes back in, and you don't have to worry about what they were going to end up using. Now, Roar does have a negative priority, so it's not like if Rayquaza was so much faster than all the other Pokemon, this would go first and you'd be able to negate any move they end up using. That's not the case. It is going to be that negative priority, so it is going to go later in the turn than a lot of other moves. It will be, I believe, in the same priority bracket as Trick Room. So again, that's why Roar would go first before Trick Room, so you'd be able to kind of roar them out, and they're not going to be able to end up setting that. That's a great way to potentially get some people to rage quit, as I know he knows as well. But again, there are a lot of other great moves that you can end up using on here. Of course, you can always put Protect. That could be really, really important, especially on Rayquaza. If you want to be able to kind of like wait out a little bit, you can put a Helping Hand on it. I think that would be a huge waste, don't get me wrong, but that is a possibility as well. You can always go Rest and put something on it like Chesto Berry as well if you wanted to make sure that you're only healing the sleep as opposed to like a different status condition. You can always put Chesto on that. You can always put Rest on it. You can rest up, heal up, and of course be able to wake up right away with that Chesto Berry. That's another way that you can always end up going. Again, you can always end up putting hazards on it with like the Stealth Rock, but realistically, especially if you're playing doubles, don't think that that's necessarily the best way to go. You can always go Dragon Cheer if you have another dragon on your team and you want them to be able to kind of max out their critical hit ratio. You can always do that. Again, a lot of different things to make sure that it is a really, really great supporter for you. Now, of course, if you are going to make it a supporter, you want to bulk it out as much as possible. Get that HP up as high as possible. And of course, make sure that your defense and special defense is pretty respectable. 127 for both is really, really great. Now, if there's something specific that you were really looking to kind of protect Rayquaza from, that's when you can adjust the defense and special defense. Say you're really afraid of any kind of, special fairy, special ice, special rock move with something like a meteor beam or something like that. You can always end up kind of changing the nature if you want and being able to up its special defense a little bit more. Yes, that would kind of make it so that, you are a little lower in your defense, but if you're really specifically looking to kind of bulk out your special defense, you can do that as well. But again, a lot of different options that you can end up going with just to make it a really, really great supporter for you. Now, again, like I said as well, you can probably put some speed in here as well because you want to make sure that you can get that tailwind off. You want to make sure that your icy wind is going to be faster than theirs. You get that breaking swipe before they're able to move. So again, you can definitely put a lot more speed in there and kind of lightening up on the HP, defense, special defense, just kind of as how you see fit. Now, of course, you can always end up lowering a lot in the attack as well. You can put 4 in there, kind of max out the speed if you want as well, get it up to 125. Again, a lot of different options. And because Rayquaza does have the 150 attack base, again, even if you end up taking out the 4, it's a 170. That is a lot stronger than a lot of other Pokemon. So even if this thing has no attack investment, obviously it's not going to hit as hard as you probably want, but it's still going to do some really good damage, especially with something like Breaking Swipe that gets the stab damage as well. So being able to kind of redistribute some of these EVs could be good as well, depending on if you're trying to outspeed something, you're trying to live something from a specific type of attacker. Again, you can always adjust from that perspective as well. But again, if you're looking for something that is going to be more support, definitely I think Covert Cloak is going to be a really great item to use to be able to avoid the secondary effects. I definitely think that you can go with like safety goggles as well to be able to prevent some type of spore. You can go with some type of berry. Like I said, you can go Chesto if you want to go Chesto Resto. You can go Citrus Berry. You can go with a Pinch Berry if you think that you can really survive on like 1/3 HP. A lot of different things that you can go with, but again, you definitely want to make sure that you bulk this thing out a bit and you have an item that's really going to benefit you either from being able to heal up later in the battle or being able to avoid secondary effects or something of that nature. Again, I would definitely say don't go with the support one in this regulation. Wait for double restricted if you really want, but definitely not here. But if you do want to go with something, I definitely think the best one to go with would be the physical attacker with E-Speed, whether it's Clear Amulet. If you really want to put Life Orb on it, you can go that too, or even the Choice Band. And if you do that, definitely pair that up with something like Chien Pao. That is going to get as much power out of Rayquaza as possible. Also, make sure that you put a different stab move on it as well. I think that Dragon Ascent is a really great one to have. And again, if you have Choice Band, make sure that you have 4 attacking moves on there, including one that is going to help you pivot. And again, if you're not looking for something that's going to be popular, something that's going to be meta for Rayquaza, go for something that's special attack. Could be a lot of fun. It's going to take some people off guard, and you're going to be able to get in a quick couple of hits before they even know what hits them. And again, if you want to go with something that is going to be able to up your special attack, go with something like the Throat Spray and go Hyper Voice, and go Power Herb, go Meteor Beam. Anything to be able to make Rayquaza a little bit stronger is always going to benefit you. And of course, you do have a lot of great stab moves that Rayquaza can use, and even non-stab moves that are going to be great for coverage. And even though these are 5 different builds that I think could be really good for Rayquaza, go out there and make your own. Have a lot of fun with it. Test it here on Showdown. Build it on cart and see what you can do with it on the casual ladder or the ranked ladder once we get into January. You put on Rayquaza what you want to put on him. EV train him any way that you want. Just make sure you go out there and you have a lot of fun with it. Rayquaza is a really awesome Pokemon. It's always been one of my favorite legendaries, one of my favorite shinies as well. So even though I do think it is something like a D tier Pokemon as it pertains to like Regulation G/Regulation I still think it's one that I will be very excited to see up on the ladder, and one that I'm going to try to end up using as well. If you guys have any other Rayquaza builds that you want to share down in the comments, please do. I would actually love to see them. It might actually give me a couple ideas too. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to go down and drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.